Girl bundled around. It was cold this morning. But I like it. I wish it would keep raining. It kind of looks like rain. All right. Oh, it was nice. And it rained last night a little bit. Like it woke me up. I was like, oh, this is nice. It always rains at night. I wish it would rain more during the day. But yeah, it rained quite a bit yesterday. All right, so this is it. Well, this is our last lecture that we'll do of the semester, which is crazy, right? Again, it feels like forever ago. August feels like a really long time ago, and yet it went really, really, really quickly. And it's December. I can't believe it's December 5th. I feel so far behind. I got to get going. I'm like really behind on my Christmas shopping, and my kids are very happy to remind me of it every day. They're like, did you buy our stuff yet? I haven't seen packages yet. I'm like, they're coming. It's coming. I'm behind. I got to get going. But we'll talk about the last kind of few things. We'll talk about sex in the media, sex in advertising. I have some ads to share with you, which I think are kind of interesting or memorable or fun. We'll talk a little bit about pornography, kind of going over some of the things from the documentary, and then prostitution, and then we'll be done. And I have those reminders up there, but I'll talk about them at the end. We'll see if anybody else comes. It was hard to get up this morning. Mondays are tough, and then like you get a cold, rainy Monday, it's even harder, right? But let's go ahead and get into this, and then I'll go over that again at the end, see if there are any questions. But we skipped this first part, and my voice is a little bit better, which is good. I'll take it. But when we look at selling sex, this is something that is just constantly used, especially in the media. Sex sells, it gets your attention. And so it's very successful in selling products. We link it to things all the time. It's so commonplace that you almost don't even notice it unless it's over the top. But when we're trying to advertise something, right, whether it is a product that we're trying to sell or whatever it is that we're trying to get your attention on, there are three kind of things that you have to do when you're advertising. The first is to get somebody's attention, and that is increasingly difficult to do because our ads are constantly upping the ante, and as people where we tend to have very scattered attention. So to get somebody's attention, and then you want to get them excited, and then get them to associate that excitement with the product that you're advertising. So not only do you have to get their attention and excite them, but you have to pair the two together. And one of the ways that we do that pretty consistently is through sexuality, right? So having images that are very scandalous or very sexual in nature, that tends to get people's attention, and sometimes linking that together. And really the examples of this are like beyond, there's just so many of them. I had to really limit myself to this. But sometimes this is something that's very blatant, or it can be very subliminal. Blatant would be like if you open any kind of magazine, it's always things like colognes and perfumes. Like nobody has clothes on, but then there's like a little bottle of perfume at the bottom. Or I saw one for bottled water. There was no water anywhere in the picture, but like Jennifer Aniston was like naked, and it was said like water at the bottom, smart water at the bottom. Like if you open any pop culture magazine, there's so much of this that's very blatant. It can also be somewhat subliminal, right? Where it's not maybe an immediate effect, but it kind of seeps into your mind and you subconsciously link things together. But I want to show you a couple of examples that are very blatant. They're obviously very sexual in nature. That's why I'm showing them to you. So just as a heads up. One of them was banned, but that always makes it more popular. The second you ban something, everybody goes and tries to find it. But I want to show you a couple of ads just for fun. And a couple of people did this as one of their projects. Again, there's so many of them, so I just kind of narrowed it down. But as a side note, if you ever find like a wild or ridiculous one, please feel free to send it to me. I would love to see it. Just awful, right? I mean, there's so many. I really had to limit myself, you all. Like there's so many. And again, if you find one later, feel free to send it to me, right? Like you're welcome to. There's so many great examples. But again, the point of them is they get your attention, right? And the Super Bowl, because you know how much I love football, I talk about it all the time. The Super Bowl is the best for these, right? And oftentimes they get banned, which again just makes them even more popular. There was one a few years ago where it was like spice up your life and be vegetarian, and the whole thing was like people like engaging in inappropriate sexual behaviors with vegetables. It was just absolutely ridiculous, and of course it was banned, which made it popular. So some of these, obviously the ones I played for you are very blatant, right? But they can be much more subliminal, a little bit more or a little bit less obvious. But our culture uses a ton of this because it gets your attention, right? And the idea is that we can arouse you and get you to be excited and associate that product with that sexuality or that arousal, right? Then you'll go and buy it, right? And so maybe on the surface, you're like, oh, that's ridiculous. I'm never going to do that. But later today, when you're hungry, you might be like, I might go to Carl's Jr., right? Because it's in the back of your mind. That's kind of a subliminal idea. Or you're trying to buy a body spray and like you don't know which one to get. Oh, how about the Axe Red? Ooh, I saw that commercial, right? It kind of in the back of your mind can have that effect. So again, this is something that's just so obvious. Next time you open a magazine, really look at the ads and you'll see it very, very blatantly. Any other like thoughts or anything here? Again, feel free to send them to me if you find one. Sorry, the skills one was removed, right? I don't know if you really wanted to see it anyway, but okay, let me bring that back up. So we talked about pornography a little bit last time through that documentary, right? So that documentary, I think, really interesting. And as I mentioned, pornography has a very controversial history, right? It's been banned an incredible number of times. It's got a lot of stereotypes, but there's pornography and then there's erotica, and they're a little bit different. Sometimes we talk about like hardcore pornography versus softcore pornography. There's also another distinction of erotica. But pornography is any sexually explicit material like images or texts or videos that is sold with the intention to cause arousal. Right? And a lot of people watch pornography. It's very, very common. People watch it alone. People watch it with a partner. Pornography traditionally is a little bit more like harder in content than erotica. Erotica is usually something that's a little bit more respectful in nature. Maybe it's geared more toward couples. And I mentioned this before, that pornography has gone through an incredible number of transformations and changes. And one of the things that's becoming more and more popular are blockbuster pornography, right? And what they mean by that are like full-length movies that have plot, right? And they're actually like very like highly produced. It costs a lot of money to produce. One of the more popular ones, one of the first ones was like a Pirates of the Caribbean spinoff. But there's an incredible amount of like hardcore sexuality in it as well. But it has this like plot to it. And the idea is that it was meant to be geared more toward couples who could watch it together and then have it lead to something else. So there's obviously an incredible range. And a lot of you went to sex shops as one of your assignments. And there's just every little niche that you can imagine when it comes to pornography, right? And this is, again, a very, very popular industry. It makes an incredible amount of money, but it's also very, very controversial, as the documentary was talking about with Larry Flint and a lot of these big kingpins who have gone to jail at some point for violating censorship. There's a lot of issues, and how do we define what's okay to put out there and what isn't? And it's something that's constantly showing up in legal cases and so on. So as I said, it comes in every possible variety and speciality, every imaginable topic. This is something that, again, is not a modern invention. It's been around a long time. Playboy was probably the thing that most popularized it. So when Playboy was released, I forget the year that it was, 1953. I won't ask you that, but in 1953, when Playboy was released, it launched pornography into a whole nother level, right? It kind of brought it into people's homes in a different way. Then the VCR, when the VCR was invented and people could buy videotapes that they could watch at home. Debbie Does Dallas was probably one of the most like popular first ones, and Deep Throat. There was a bunch of them in like the early 70s that became very popular that people could watch at home for the first time. And then when the internet came around, the internet again launched it into another level. So we see that there was a lot of different kind of points in history where this changed: the VCR, Playboy, and then the internet, all of them kind of taking it beyond where it was before. And with the popularity of the internet and the prevalency of the internet, that makes it very hard to define community, which is something we'll talk about more on the next slide. But this is something you're technically have to be 18 to purchase this, though a lot of people do consume or watch or view or purchase pornography much earlier than that. But again, something that's been around for a long time in every possible specialty and topic that you can imagine. Always been controversial. So they talked about this in the documentary, but this term of obscenity If something is obscene, right, then we're saying that it is offensive in some way, right? And this is where we see a lot of legislation around pornography, the idea of censorship and obscenity. And they talked about this in the documentary, that there's like that list of things and acts that you're not allowed to portray, right? Things like fisting wasn't allowed, and a whole bunch of any kind of acts with animals, right? Murder, right? Some of the things that they talked about in the documentary. But if something is deemed obscene, then they oftentimes will ban that piece of pornography. Now, again, when you ban things, oftentimes you make them more popular in a different way. But obscenity has kind of three different prongs to it, or three different levels. In order to be defined as obscene, the first, the dominant theme of the work, the piece of pornography, as a whole, must appeal to the prurient interest in sex. What they mean by prurient is that it's characterized only by lust, right? Only by like blatant lust and sexuality. The second is that it's offensive to contemporary community standards. And this is where they run into problems. How do we define community? In the past, what they would do is they would play a piece of pornography in a courtroom, and they would bring in a panel of random people, like average people. And if these average people were offended by it, then it was deemed to be obscene. But now community is the internet, right? And where is the community on the internet? That's incredibly difficult to define. And as we, again, up the ante on what we put out there, it's harder and harder to offend people. So this is where it starts to get really tricky. How do we define contemporary community standard? And there's a lot of legislation that has surrounded this. It's very, very complicated. But a couple of the ones that they showed you in the documentary, like the one where they pretended to like rape, beat, and murder that woman, right? That one was banned. The people had an incredible fine. One of them went to jail for a period of time. Again, there's often, it's very obvious when it goes too far beyond the line, but the ones that are right on the line, it's very blurry. It must also be without any kind of serious literary, artistic, political, or scientific value, right? So if it meets these three things, then an item of pornography might be banned. And again, very controversial. People like Larry Flint, that kingpin, super like cringy, kind of creepy guy in a way. He has gone to jail several times for putting things out there that were considered to be obscene. And this is something that we see a lot of here, because a lot of pornography is produced in like Burbank and Hollywood area. So we get a lot of cases of this in our backyard. Any questions or thoughts or anything here at all? So is pornography helpful or harmful, right? Probably a little bit of both, right? There are positives and negatives to pornography, right? And so there are some advantages and some disadvantages. So a little bit of both. Positives, a lot of people find pornography to be very helpful for arousal, right? Helping them to get into the mood or to become aroused. It can help people to indulge in fantasies that maybe aren't acceptable, right? So people who have paraphilias or fetishes that they aren't able to explore might be able to watch a pornographic film, right, that features those and have some ability to indulge in those fantasies without having to act them out. It can provide outlets for socially unacceptable behaviors, facilitate masturbation, which can help with differing sex drives of partners. Right, a lot of people have different sex drives than the partner that they have. And so they might use pornography as a way to become aroused and engage in like masturbation as a way to like control that or deal with that differing sex drive. So there are a lot of positives. A lot of people enjoy pornography, right? And it doesn't necessarily have to be harmful, but there are some negatives as well. One of the biggest ones, the first two really, it depicts sex very, very inaccurately. Right. And so if this is your only metric for what sex looks like, that can be really problematic. Right. The people who are in these films oftentimes are engaging in an incredible amount of sex. Right. They don't respond the way maybe a typical person would. You're seeing men who are much, much larger than the average in terms of penis size, women whose bodies don't look like the average, like typical female body. So it perpetuates a lot of stereotypes and myths. So what you often see is people maybe engaging in sex for a much longer time than is typical or average, right? And taking them a lot longer to reach orgasm, right? Or having body types that are very inaccurate of like the norm, right? Most men are not 8 to 10 inches in penis length, right? Again, we talked about this before. It's like somewhere around like 6 inches or so. So it can lead to a lot of issues with like low self-esteem, being unhappy with your sexual relationships. They also normalize a lot of violence. Very common in pornography that somebody like says no or tries to push someone away and they just push a little bit harder and then it happens, right? And so oftentimes we get this normalizing violence in sexuality, which can be really problematic for like norms around violence and coercion, which we talked about in the last chapter. So some advantages and some disadvantages, a little bit of both when it comes to pornography. Any other thoughts, questions, anything else here before we move on to a different P? Prostitution. We got prostitution and pornography. Prostitution, the exchange of sexual services for money. The proper term for somebody who is a prostitute is sex worker, though oftentimes prostitute is the term that's used. But this is somebody who is selling themselves in some capacity for money, right? Selling sex for money. And this can appear in a wide variety of ways. But this is sometimes called the oldest profession. It's been around for a very, very long time. There's no typical sex worker, if you will. So this is something that has really kind of existed throughout history, right? It's something that we see a lot of in the media. So I want you to just take a minute, right? Find a couple of people around you and just any like stereotypes or thoughts that you come up with in your mind when you think of prostitution. Maybe it's a character from a film or a behavior that they're doing. Just jot it down so you can share it, but you're not turning it in. But just find a couple of people around you. What stereotypes or thoughts come to mind when you think of prostitution, right? So just take a minute or two and then we'll talk about it together.
That's like that. Yeah. That's like approach. Yeah. Yeah. I have reference to it. Yeah. That's not. That's what's not here. Yeah. One thing I didn't. So you don't know what I mean. Yeah. Yes. Yeah. We have like the oh yeah. Yes. Well, you see, that's like what it is though. Yeah.
Single mom is no shit ever. We're probably not supposed to. Yeah, I was like, that's pretty fun.
So when you think of somebody who is a prostitute or a sex worker, do you picture someone who's male or female right off the bat? Female, right? Did anyone go with male right off the bat? Right? Female, right? So it's probably the biggest stereotype, and it's true. Most of the time it's supposed to be someone like is female. What are some other, like, what do you think of? What are some of the stereotypes or associations you came up with? Anybody? Yeah.
The typically associated with like being drug addicts.
Okay. Right. So they're using substances, drug addicts. Okay. Other stuff. Yeah.
Just that every time show or media piece, I've done as like a victim.
Okay.
That-
Yeah, you see that a lot in like in different shows, right? Like it's like NCIS and all of those, right? For sure. Yeah. Okay. Okay. Like a last resort or like the lowest like of status in a way.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah, very stigmatized, viewed very poorly. Yeah.
Usually dress really skimpy and they like
Yeah.
stand on corners of streets,
Yeah.
very like obviously driven.
Mhm. Yeah, I'm glad you said that, right? That's probably the most common portrayal and stereotype, like the streetwalker, right? They're on the corner, right? Dressed like kind of like in the picture, right? Anybody else? Other things that you thought of? Should you think of any movies? I always think of Pretty Woman. I don't know why. Like, I'm not sure why, right? It's just like the classic stereotype of this, so inaccurate, but like I think of that anyway. Yeah.
But it was like Dreamworld or something.
Huh.
Take me to Dreamworld, and then they'd go and then it was like a gas station workers,
Okay.
and then they'd be like, that was like the secret word, and then they'd go.
Okay.
They were all like actors, struggling actors.
Interesting. What was it called? Dream.
Something in the 50s though.
Okay.
And it was like, oh, gay prostitution, so it was also.
Okay. Interesting. And code words for it. I like it. Right. Yeah. If you remember what it is. Okay. That could be interesting though, right? Yeah. Did you have one too?
I was
No, but I'm a little familiar, but I haven't watched it.
It's seen 80s.
Mhm.
It's kind of picking up,
Yeah.
and most of the characters like have engaged in sex work, plus they're all trans women. So like to get by and all that type of stuff, they've engaged in a lot of sex work. One of the characters gets killed by a John.
Okay. Yeah. Yeah. And that and the stereotype too of being trans is another one that often pops up, right? Of like it's somebody who's dressed this way, but they're actually male, right? Lots and lots of stereotypes, some of them true, right? Some of them not, right? Again, there's no typical sex worker, but there's definitely kind of the stereotypical one, which a lot of you are kind of mentioning here. A brothel would be a house in which a group of prostitutes work together, usually run by like a range of individuals. I don't know, I just thought of a Black Sails, right? I watched that like not that long ago, if any of you saw it. Lots of brothel activity in there, or Game of Thrones, right? Or House of the Dragon, all the like brothels that they go to in all these shows. But very, very common profession, right? Very underground profession because it's illegal in most places, which we'll talk about more in a moment, but it has been around for a very long time, very popular in the past, like in the 1920s, which were a period of like propriety and being very proper and like repressed sexuality. Whenever you see those periods of time, you get like a flourishment of prostitution, right? Kind of very under the surface level. Lots of different types. Again, female prostitutes are kind of the norm, much more common than male prostitution. Lots of different terms for different types of female prostitutes. A call girl, typically a call girl, somebody that you would like pay by the hour, right? And you would contract them by phone, hence the name, right? Phone or internet now, right? But you hire them in a way. A courtesan, I always think of Moulin Rouge, right? Moulin Rouge, she was a courtesan, right? Someone who's like of a higher class, often dealing with men who are wealthy or men of rank. Streetwalkers, again, kind of being the stereotype, someone who stands on a street corner and oftentimes like solicits people who drive up to them in some way. Escorts might work for like an agency where you go out almost like accompanying you on a date. If you will, like they go out with you for the night, which may or may not include sex, right? Depending on the agency and depending on what they offer. Bondage and discipline prostitutes, very specific to like BDSM, which again may or may not include sex. Some of these might not include sex necessarily, But this might include all kinds of like BDSM play of like bondage, and sadism and masochism, but maybe not intercourse necessarily. It depends on the agency. It depends on the person, obviously. And then a comfort girl was a term that became popular back in World War II. This was a woman who would provide sex for soldiers, oftentimes called a hospitality girl, very common back in like the 1950s and World War II era. But lots of different types of female prostitution is definitely the norm over male prostitution, though men can obviously be prostitutes as well. Gigolo, and I can't help but think it's old, but like Deuce Bigalow, male gigolo, right? Gigolo is a man who was hired to have sexual relationships with women, typically also receiving like financial support from them as well, right? So they hire them and they oftentimes accompany them, perform sexual favors, but they're also receiving financial support from them. A call boy, very similar to a call girl. A hustler would be a male sex worker who provides sexual services to other men. And then again, escorts, just like with women, lots of different types, right? Depending on what you're looking for, depending on the different like populations of people, where you're hiring this person, what kind of behaviors you're interested in engaging in. But again, women are by far the norm, though men obviously do perform this service as well. What do you think the number one reason is that people become a prostitute or a sex worker? If you had to guess, what do you think number one reason somebody would do that? Yeah. Yeah, but financial instability, they need money, right? Number one reason that people tend to do this is pursuing money. It does come at a very high cost though. I mean, what do you think are some of the costs, if you will, the like drawbacks or dangers, we could also say, of being a prostitute? Yeah. Right, definitely impact your mental health. Yeah. Yeah, it's illegal, right? Almost everywhere, right? It's illegal. And so there's no protection at all from the law. Yeah, did you have one? Yeah, right, definitely affecting your reputation. What else? Can you think of anything else? Yeah. Yeah, that's true, right? Definitely. Yeah. You could get murdered, assaulted, attacked, and there's no retribution because you can't report it, right? Because you were engaging in an illegal activity. Yeah. Yeah, and that's a big one too, right? Your sexual health, a lot of STDs, STIs from unprotected sex, right? And so there's a lot of consequences. So even though people might make quite a bit of money from this, it does tend to come at a very high cost, right? And those are a lot of the really big ones that you all mentioned. So as it stands right now, as it stands in the United States, prostitution is currently illegal in the United States, except for 8 rural counties in Nevada, not Las Vegas. So just outside of Las Vegas, it's legal, but not in Vegas itself, right? So there are 8 small counties in Nevada, again, just outside of the Vegas limits, where prostitution is legal, but everywhere else in the United States, it's not. Now, I used to go to Vegas all the time before we had kids. We took them 2 years ago, and that was really interesting. I'm not sure I'd ever take them again. They were like, why are all these people not wearing clothing? I'm like, I don't know where to begin with that. It was very colorful, right? As Vegas is, it's very colorful. But if you ever go to Vegas, and I know they still do this because they tried to do it when we went with our kids. There's always people standing out on the corner with the little pamphlets or the little cards, and they sit there and they kind of like flick them back and forth like this, and they try and hand them to everybody who walks by. And everyone always thinks I'm male, so I get a lot of these cards. I don't know. I never turn them down, which is probably my own fault. They'll hand them to me like, oh, thank you. All right, I just collect them, and then I hide them in my father-in-law's house all over the place. So we'll come home from Vegas and they put him in his shower. It's like, Crystal misses you, call me, like put him in his bed. Oh, he's so mad at me, and I love it. It makes me so happy. But there's so much of this in Nevada because it is legal in Nevada. And so what can happen is people will go to Las Vegas and there's all these buses and escort services that take you outside of the city limits. And then that behavior is legal, right? So there's a lot of interesting questions about legalizing prostitution. As it stands right now, it is illegal, again, except for those 8 counties in Nevada. Used to be Rhode Island allowed brothels as well, but they removed that in a recent election. So random. It was like one little county in Rhode Island. But if we were to legalize it, what that would do is it would cause there to be a lot more protection. Right. So if we legalize prostitution, then there would be regular testing for STDs and STIs. People could report crimes, so there'd be protection against like being assaulted or attacked in some way. So there's a lot of potential benefits to legalizing. Also would be a huge money industry, which is a big reason why marijuana has been legalized in a lot of states. It's a huge revenue producer for a lot of people. Yeah.
There's a discussion between like legalization and legalization.
Yeah.
I hear like often that decriminalization would be much better because legalizing it would like leave a lot more room for it to be exploited.
It could, right? It's tricky because this is such a weird gray area.
Yeah.
And they did this, I hate to keep making the parallel, but marijuana is another one that tends to get a lot of like this same discussion, right? And so when you decriminalize something, it's not legal, but it's not criminal. And so what happens is if you get caught doing it, there's no punishment, but there's also no protection or regulation either. You could go and report it and you wouldn't get in trouble for engaging in that behavior because it's not criminal, but they also tend to discount it much more. There's no like protection in terms of any kind of like STD, STI testing. People, if we did this, people would be registered. There'd be like a registered bank of people who are sex workers or prostitutes. So decriminalization is a strange one. And again, they did this with marijuana in a lot of places. California, marijuana used to be decriminalized. So if you got caught with a certain amount of it, you wouldn't get in trouble, but then you could be punished. So it's a weird gray area.
It's like discuss like I know summer for legalizing it, but not.
Yeah.
So I just found like.
Yeah, I'm glad you brought that up. You know, sometimes we talk about like if we legalize it, what messages are we sending?
Well, also,
You know.
For it to be exploited that way.
Yeah. Yeah, it's a really big debate and it's something that comes up a lot. You know, should we legalize it? Should we decriminalize it? I mean, this is something that exists, right? And we can deny that it exists all we want, but it's very much out there. And a lot of people engage in very informal prostitution, right? Like I'll go out on a date with you and have sex with you in exchange for dinner and a night out, right? Is that prostitution or not? Right. And that's up to every person to decide. So a lot of people engage in like prostitution like behavior, but maybe not in a formal way where they're going out and doing it on the street corner. Right. And so where do we draw the line is another big question. But just something to be aware of. This is a discussion that comes up a lot in terms of legislation. Should we legalize it or decriminalize it? And how would that change the way that this, you know, presents and the frequency of it and so on? And would it make it safer? Right. If everyone was tested and you knew what STIs or STDs somebody had because they were being regularly tested, that could be a big protection as well. So just something to think about. Again, I don't think it's a big topic right now. Kind of took a back burner with everything with COVID. It kind of went into the back, but we'll see what happens in the future. It comes up constantly in terms of like legislation. Any other thoughts or comments or anything here? I'm just picturing my father-in-law. He was so mad. I put like 50 of them in his bed. I'd be so mad. If somebody did that to me, I'd have to wash like the whole bed. That would just make me so grossed out. But I put them all in his bed and he pulled back the covers and it was like 50 of these like little brochures everywhere. Oh, I thought it was hilarious. I just got like the biggest kick out of it. It was probably really mean, but I thought it was hilarious. I remind him of it every now and then too. The last thing in here, right? This is our last slide, right? That's crazy. Just let that sink in for a minute, right? It's our last. I get sentimental at the end, like everything's like the last, right? Last slide. But another area that we see sex for sale, and this one is in a very scary way growing in popularity and frequency, which is disturbing. I'm a parent of 3 little girls, so this is something I always am like terrified of in the back of my mind somewhere. But sex trafficking, and sex trafficking has just become such a common form of like modern day like slavery, if you will. It's one of the fastest growing organized crimes in our country and in other countries. So sex trafficking If you read this definition up here, it's the recruitment, transportation, transfer, harboring, or receipt of persons by means of threat or use of force or other forms of coercion, of abduction, of fraud, of deception, of the abuse of power, or of a position of vulnerability, or of the giving or receiving of payments or benefits to achieve the consent of a person having control over another person for the purposes of exploitation. So traditionally, what this is young women who are kidnapped or sold into sex trafficking, again, like a form of slavery. And they're oftentimes, it's like a debt bondage thing, or maybe just as a way to incur money for the people who are running these businesses. Very like underground, very illegal, often using force, drugs, and other methods to control their victims. It's a very scary thing that has gained a lot of traction over the last like 10 years, people being kidnapped and sold into sex trafficking like across the country. So this is another one that's starting to gain a lot of like awareness. And it's been around forever, of course, but it's something that unfortunately is just like a very fast growing type of organized crime. And again, as a parent of 3 girls, but it always scares me. I always think about it in the back of my mind. The second they go missing, my partner's always like, they've been kidnapped and sold into sex trafficking. I'm like, she's over there hiding behind the clothes. She's okay, but we'll be all right. But it's always that fear. My partner's always like, where are our kids? Like always holding on to them tightly, afraid that they're going to be kidnapped into this. And in a way, it's not like an unrealistic fear. A lot of people do get kidnapped. And this is something, unfortunately, that has grown quite a bit for the last 10 years. Yeah.
I don't know if this is a problem experience or not, but I know like getting texts from all of the like older women that I know, or just women that I know, like
Sure.
there's a new thing that they're putting on people's car and you gotta look.
Yeah. Marking your car, yeah. I forget, there was one that was like maybe, yeah, it was one a few months ago where it was like the Target in Simi Valley, one of the Target off of like the older one off of like Sycamore. And there was like this incident where they were marking people's cars as a potential target for sex trafficking. Yeah, it's frightening. And there's always something like that. Watch out for this and watch out for that. And marking your car. Any other like thoughts or questions or anything? I'm just going to leave this slide up for a long time because then it like doesn't feel so sad, right? Well, that is our, like I said, that's our last slide. Look, it disappeared. And it's like we're done. We'll go back to the beginning and do it again. So I have a few things I want to talk about, and then we'll be done a little bit early today, so you have a little bit of extra time, which hopefully will be helpful. I know this is like the hardest, this week and next week are some of the hardest weeks of the semester with stress and finals and then the holidays coming up and just everything, right? But I want to remind you about a couple of things. So just give me a couple more minutes and then I'll give you a little extra time today. But if you go onto Canvas, remember that I won't see you on Wednesday. Okay, so Wednesday we will have exam number 3, which is the final. They are one and the same. It will open up Wednesday morning at 12:01 a.m. and close at 11:59 p.m. So just like exams 1 and 2 did. So make sure at some point on Wednesday that you take exam number 3. Now, obviously you'll have this time free. I'm giving you our time to do that, but you can take it at any point during the day if you want to sleep in or a later time works better for you. Remember that there's also a study guide. So if you click on modules, and then wait, if you click here, here's study guide number 3, right? So the 3rd study guide is here. And if you open this, this exam, remember it's not cumulative. So it's just on everything since the last test. So make sure you know any terms that are on here. So chapters 13, 12, 14, 15, 16, 17, 18. I put them in the order we covered them, which you'll also see on the exam. So anything that's on here, make sure you know it. If it's not on here, you don't need to study it. It won't be on the text. Yeah. There should be, I'll go back and check it. Is it not? Sometimes I forget to click the visible button, but here, let's check real quick while we're here. For 14. Oh, look, it's not there visible. So I'll make sure that I make it visible when we're done, because I know it's there, but it must not be visible. So thank you. Thank you for letting me know. I'll go back and do that. So make sure you study for the exam. I would really recommend that you do study, right? Write out the terms on the study guide, prepare for it. The exam is right here under quizzes. So again, please make sure you take that on Wednesday. The other thing that you'll see is we do have that closing assignment. And a handful of you have already submitted this, which is fantastic. But if you're wondering where that is, so on here, closing assignments right here at the top, right? And so this was the thing, we talked about this before, but this is where you're going back and thinking about 5 things from the class that you can relate to your life in, right? So hopefully there's more than 5, but at some point during the semester, hopefully there was like a term or a concept that you're like, I could connect this to my life in some way. This changes the way I view something. I could apply this in some way. And so that's what you'll be doing here is you'll be writing about 5 different terms and then how you could apply them to your life. And it's worth 25 points. So please do make sure you do that. Also, make sure you're checking your grade, right? So if you click on the grades tab, and I have 0 points, right? Like I've shamefully failed our class, right? Hopefully that's none of you are in that spot. But make sure you go back and check every single one of these, right? It'll tell you what your score is. If something looks wrong, let me know now, right? Once I submit final grades, it's very difficult to change it. But if you can let me know now, we can go back, I can look and see what happened and we can fix it. I will be here during the final. Right, so if you want to come meet with me, conversation, I will be here. But otherwise, I won't necessarily see all of you after today. I don't want to let you leave. I'm just gonna stare at you for 26 more minutes. Not really, that'd be awesome, right? But thank you all so much for I love this class. This class has been really fun. I think we have a really cool dynamic in here and I'm gonna miss you all. So please come say hi. If you're around, I always have candy. You just have to say hi and then you can have candy. And I'm sure I'll see some of you, around, but thank you all for a wonderful semester. Good luck on the final, good luck on the paper. I'll hang out for a little bit. If you have any questions, you can come up and talk to me and ask. Otherwise, you have a little bit of extra time and yeah, please come say hi. I'll miss you. So come say hi to me if you're around and I'll make that those slides available too.
Thank
Sis?
you. Look at that.
Thank you, you too. Oh yeah, I know. Thank you.